Hello, all you crypto fans. Today, we're going to talk about why we're about to pump and why the SEC is a cooked goose. Let's start with the SEC because we have just information building up to that. In case you haven't seen, a federal judge has said he might just sanction the SEC's lawyers. Why? Because they deliberately lied in a case where they used false and misleading information that they knew was false and misleading information to strip a company of financial assets or freeze a company's financial assets so they did not have access to them. The company demonstrated that the allegations against them were false. And moreover, the SEC lawyers that made the allegations knew they were false. So the judge was just basically asking the lawyers, why should I not sanction you? And the answer is, of course, he should sanction them. Now, sanctions generally means you can lose your law license or bar license, and you can be fined, or you can be fined. Now that might not seem like a big deal. Well, losing the bar license would be, but the fine may not seem like a big deal. But the penalties make lawyers less likely to be willing to lie for Gary Gensler and the SEC. Which means the SEC bullying tactics are no longer going to work as well as they have. And the main thing that has kept the SEC going is the bullying tactics. Without them, they can't really enforce their laws. It's the threats and the bullying tactics that have made people cower in fear of the SEC. And it's being more and more brought up, especially in the LBRY case, that the SEC's case wasn't actually that strong against LBRY. I think it might have been actually overturned on appeal, but they ran out of money. And the SEC specifically threatened LBRY by bankrupting them legally. Now, I think lawyers and courts are catching on now, and they're not very kind with that specific tactic. There's been articles that are like pinpointing the fault on Gary Gensler and the SEC strategy. And the fact that their veil of invulnerability has been completely shattered by them losing lawsuits definitely does not help them because there are more and bigger companies willing to take on the SEC. Kraken was deferring to the SEC, but after their losses, they decided to fight the SEC. And Coinbase and Binance, of course, are all fighting the SEC. And despite the DOJ winning against Binance and getting the settlement from CZ, the SEC has had no such luck because their cases are substantially weaker. And there are bills in Congress to defund the SEC, or at least Tom Emmer's bill, saying that the SEC may not use the funding to go after crypto companies. Gary Gensler's reputation has also taken a very large hit, as it should have, because he is the guy leading and masquerading as a regulator when he's really just trying to play the part of politician. And there was a big article in Fortune magazine consisting of many experts that basically he says he wasn't actually a regulator, but he's masquerading as one, but he's really a politician. So this week, Fortune magazine took a deep look at Gary's time in the SEC, and essentially they wrote some summaries of the article, and basically it said that he's not a real regulator, but he's just a politician masquerading as one, and all his actions are not for the benefit of the American people or the benefit of his industry, but it's all geared towards his personal reputation and his personal ambitions. They basically have stated, and it's true, that he's had his eye on the Secretary of Treasury's job ever since the Obama administration, and he's just waiting for that spot to open up. But this, his stint as SEC commissioner should shut off all the ways to Secretary of Treasury because he's done a really bad job as the SEC commissioner. So basically, we all know that Gensler served as the CFTC chairman, and he tried to expand the agency's powers. And then in 2016, after the Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, he tied his fortunes to Elizabeth Warren, which obviously leads a movement to crack down on Wall Street and crypto. So the thing is, there's a running rumor in DC for several years that Gensler has had his eyes on the becoming Treasury Secretary since the Obama administration. And of course, the assumption was repeated in nearly every interview with Fortune, although always tiptoed around by his allies. And of course, even all his critics and all his allies agree on Gensler's ambition. Gary Gensler is masquerading as a regulator. Richie Torres, a Democratic congressman who supports the crypto industry, told Fortune. So for those of you thinking that there's most Democrats or all Democrats are on Gary's side, that's not true. Many of them do not actually think that he's an actual regulator. He's just a politician masquerading as a regulator. And he's not been very successful as the head of the SEC. He's actually done a really bad job. He's actually, obviously, Congress doesn't have any new rules on it, but he's trying to use existing laws to regulate the financial sector. And this has resulted from a lot of rulemaking from his office, which shouldn't actually happen because he's the one that enforces the rules, not makes them. Of course, like a lot of that agenda is now bogged down in lawsuits and other challenges because, he doesn't have the authority to do all that stuff, and companies are calling him out, and he's actually losing lawsuits. This does not bode well for his reputation, and that's one of the reasons he's so hard on over this, because he doesn't want to leave his post as the commissioner having failed at his job, because that decreases the chances of becoming Secretary of the Treasury. So all this junk and all the all the rumors are starting to swirl around Gary Gensler and the SEC. Even judges have threatened to just completely sanction them, and they're losing lawsuits left and right, especially in the crypto fold. And pretty much the entire crypto industry has turned against them. And a lot of these people that they're actually going after are simply just outsmarting them at their own game. So I think they're going to decrease the legitimacy of the agency. And there's even bills to just completely reform the SEC and strip it of its power. And that all comes because of Gary Gensler. So yes, this is why the SEC is entirely cooked. They looked really strong 3 years ago when they were pushing around little companies that couldn't defend themselves. But ever since the Ripple case, they've actually looked really bad, and now they're struggling to defend themselves. And Gary Gensler is going to lose his entire reputation over this because he's the one at the head of it. So the SEC is absolutely cooked. But let's actually go on to why crypto might actually moon big soon. I think all of you know that Grayscale won the court case against the SEC. And now Grayscale and BlackRock are meeting with the SEC every single day of the week to iron out stuff for the ETF. Now, rumors are that there's going to be an ETF on December 12th, which happens to be the same day as the FOMC meeting. I personally do not believe that, although I do hope that is true. But even if it doesn't come in December, it's coming in January. I do think because of the court order and because of their losses in court, the SEC is running out of options. Now, they're still trying to decline to make the spot ETFs cash ETFs instead of in-kind ETFs. And the difference between those is a cash ETF is still somewhat supported by futures contracts, whereas an in-kind ETF is supported by holding actual Bitcoin. And they're trying to get around some of the custody rules and hammer out some of the custody rules for the SEC to approve an in-kind ETF, because that's the one that BlackRock and Grayscale wants, and the SEC is being very hesitant. But I think ARK has already said they have intentions to actually sue the regulator if they don't approve the ETF by January. And that's not a lawsuit that the SEC wants to fight. ARK Invest is very well funded. And the SEC's record of fighting well-funded lawsuits from powerful opponents has not worked so well. And the courts are getting very, very tired of Gary Gensler and the SEC stonewalling. So I think they recognize that if they actually deny it, they'll be forced to accept it by the court in disgrace. So I do think that's going to get approved at least by January. And it might be this month too, if the rumors are true. And it could be true because Grayscale and BlackRock are meeting with the SEC every single day. That being said, the halving is still coming in April. And Jerome Powell just kind of signaled that they're done with interest rate hikes. He still says it's too premature to say we're completely done, and it's too premature to talk about any kind of interest rate decreases. But there is a Fed governor this week that was hawkish earlier that said we might actually look at decreases within a couple of months, which means possibly Q2 2024 decreases, which coincide with everything else that could spur the Bitcoin market up. And also there's countries like Colombia, which just elected a pro-Bitcoin leader that actually invests in Bitcoin. Argentina just elected a pro-Bitcoin president. And even though El Salvador's Bukele stepped away from the presidency, he's only doing so until next June to work on his re-election campaign. And he's going to be back probably for another 4 years. There are, like, Taiwan is even looking at making Bitcoin legal tender as well. So there's all these forces working in favor of Bitcoin. And I don't really see any one single force like counteracting it. The economy is recovering. And if rates come down, people are going to have money again to invest in volatile assets like Bitcoin. And I do think, like, with BlackRock and Fidelity coming in, just them coming in will get people to invest more, even if they're not investing in those ETFs, because when they see those big companies coming in, they tend to have more confidence in the asset overall. So Bitcoin definitely has that going for it next year. And of course, they're still going to start filing for smaller ETFs of smaller coins or combined ETFs. And there is a good chance that, the SEC finally gets put in its place, regardless of what the outcome of the election is. They're also going to try to ramp up the economy going into an election year, because they always do, and that will probably benefit Bitcoin as well. So we have all these things coming in favor of Bitcoin soon. The SEC is getting cooked more than ever, and from both a regulatory standpoint and a macroeconomic standpoint, Bitcoin seems to be headed towards more of a moon phase next year, and it could be much higher than we think because of the continuing buying pressure that these ETFs are going to bring. A lot of companies are waiting for the ruling to just jump in, or waiting for an ETF to jump in, and a couple of companies like BlackRock have already seeded their funds. A lot of the analysts predict hundreds of billions flowing into crypto over the next couple of years, and that will skyrocket us very, very far. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.